Great. Well, my clock just struck 1 o'clock. Do you want to go ahead and get started?
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
All right, let's do it. Well, good afternoon, everyone, if you're on the East Coast, and good morning if you're on the West Coast or somewhere in between. Thanks for being here for today's Bloomerang webinar, Finding Your Middle Class Millionaires. Who are they and how can you reach them? Thanks so much for being here. My name is Stephen Shattuck, and as always, I'm the VP of Marketing here at Bloomerang, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. And just some housekeeping items before we begin. I wanted to let everyone know that we are recording this presentation, and I'll be sending out a link to the recording a little later on this afternoon. So if you have to leave early or if you want to perhaps review the content a little later on or share it with a coworker or a friend, you'll be able to do that. Just look for an email from me. Later on this afternoon, I'll also send out the slides just in case anyone happened to miss them this morning. And I want to encourage everyone listening along today to please chat in any questions that you have for our two guest speakers. We're going to do a formal Q&A session towards the end of the hour-long session here. And we'd love for you to contribute, ask any questions along the way. Maybe if you want something clarified or explained further, please do that, and we'll try to get to just as many questions as we can before the 2 o'clock hour. And just in case this is your first Bloomerang webinar with us, welcome. If that's the case, we do these webinars every Thursday. This is actually our last webinar of the year. It's kind of hard to believe, but we got a great schedule of webinars coming up in 2015. So you can check that out. We also, in addition to offering these webinars, we have a great donor management software platform. So if you're in the market for that or you're thinking of switching vendors, please check us out. You can look at all of our features. You can get a video demo right there on our website. So now I want to go ahead and introduce our two guests. They are Harold Pinkham and Ron Ware. Hey there, gents. How you doing?
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Thank you so much for being here. This is a great way to wrap up the year. So grateful for you to share all your knowledge with us, and I'm really excited for everyone to listen along. I even noticed some Bob Dylan slides coming up here a little bit, so I'm excited to see those. Just in case you guys aren't familiar with Harold or Ron, Harold is actually a principal and he's a co-founder of Activate Legacy. He has an extensive background in nonprofit leadership, fundraising, board development, and program implementation. He built that through a 20-year career with the Boy Scouts of America. So Harold, great for you to be here. Harold's partner in crime is also joining us, Ron Ware. He's a founder and president of Wealth Impact Partners. He's also a principal and co-founder of Activate Legacy. And he's been in the business for over 20 years. He's helped numerous families discover and articulate a personal definition of legacy and stewardship, and then help them to work to fulfill that. So guys, thanks so much for being here. I'm not going to take up any more of your time, so why don't you take it away for us?
Great. Thank you, Steve, and hey, thank you all for joining the call today. I know as we near the end of the year, you guys have a tremendous amount of pressure on with your year-end fundraising. Personally, I'm sure we've all got Christmas shopping and Hanukkah shopping and things to do at the end of the year. So thank you for taking a little bit of time to join us in this presentation. Hopefully we will deliver some thought-provoking and inspiring information that can allow you to think different about your planned giving efforts. And just very quickly about Activate Legacy, we're a fundraising consulting firm that has a specialized focus in helping nonprofits with planned giving. We're really the core of what we are is built around three principles. First, we believe that every organization has a segment of their donor population, we call the Middle Class Millionaires, who would love to do more for their beloved charities that they support, but are afraid to do so out of fear of our lack of understanding of their true financial potential. And secondly, we passionately believe that when they're provided with this information or guided through a thoughtful life and legacy process, they can begin to think more differently about their wealth. And thirdly, we believe that every nonprofit has a number of dedicated volunteers who actively support the organization and are connected in the financial industry, who can serve as a valuable resource in helping to empower those middle-class millionaire donors to think differently about their wealth and inspire them to do more that matters. And So during the course of the presentation, we will really focus on those three themes. And here we go. As Steve kind of alluded to, I'm a passionate Bob Dylan fan. Don't off the phone though for those of you that aren't into him. But anyways, I kind of start this presentation with this advertisement from Apple, actually back in the late '90s. But I really thought it captured the message that we want you folks to walk away with today. We want you to think different about your plan giving or gift planning efforts. And we want you to think differently about that underutilized segment of your donor population, those B or C-level donors that many of them you may discover could be diamonds in the rough, A-level prospects, those hidden middle-class millionaires. And secondly, we want you to realize that you have a tremendous asset of resources in your midst, on your volunteers, maybe they're on their board, maybe it's your donors, that can be a tremendous resource. These are your financial professionals that are involved in your organization one way or another that can help you out. And we want you to think different. And I think this picture captures it. Certainly Bob Dylan thought different about popular music, and whether you're into him or not, he totally changed the scope of how music was presented from that point on. And certainly we all know the power that Apple has had and how it has affected our lives. Clearly, they're a company, and there was an individual that really thought different. So I kind of want to begin with my story. As Steve alluded to, I had been working in the nonprofit sector for 20 years, and one of my last assignments was as a development director, and I was focusing on helping to get a planned giving program off the ground. And what really inspired us and really got this whole process going, and the genesis of Activate Legacy is built around the story of Bob. And Bob was a board member who was actively involved in the organization for 30 years, served on the board for about 10, had a tremendous passion for the organization. His children greatly benefited from the organization. Bob was a program guy, not a fundraiser. He only gave a gift of about $200, but he wasn't somebody that I could go to and say, "Hey, Bob, can you bring a portion to the golf tournament or fill a table at our dinner," and so forth. He was a great, valuable board person. He was not on anybody's radar for a major gift. What was interesting is he was about to retire, and we were offering a series of estate planning workshops as kind of a give back to our volunteers. In fact, my colleague Ron ran those for us at the time when I was working for the Boy Scouts. I was smart enough to bring him in and help do some of these educational presentations. And Bob was inspired enough by the presentation to want to follow up when him and his wife met with Ron, because quite frankly, they were concerned that they didn't have enough to retire. They were both in their early 60s and, again, very near retirement. What you need to understand is going into that meeting, Bob had assets of about $3.5 million. But again, he was going into this meeting thinking, gee, do I have enough? Well, during the course of the presentation, the journey with Ron, the wealth and legacy journey with Ron, not only to discover that they had excess wealth that they didn't plan to spend or necessarily want to give entirely to their children, and they soon discovered through the course of Ron that they could do more for organizations that they cared passionately about. And lo and behold, a few months later, it was announced to us that they were planning to leave a gift for $1 million for our organization. Well, needless to say, as a development officer, we said, how did this happen? And, more importantly, how do we do it again? So this kind of begins, we're going to provide here, the next several slides are built around the landmark book written by Thomas Stanley and William Danko called The Millionaire Next Door. It was written in the late 90s. If you don't have this book, it's in my mind, it's a must-own for anyone in the development world. And again, as you can allude to, it really focuses on the characteristics of the middle-class millionaires. And Danko and Stan are hired by a couple of large investment banks, Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, or one of those folks. And they were a couple of college professors, I think one was with Harvard, that was asked to come in and create, through a series of interviews and group meetings, develop a list of characteristics that made up the middle class, that made up millionaires. And then they, in turn, were going to use that information to obviously market, try and get more people into the business. Well, what Danko and Stanley discovered was that when these folks started coming in for these group meetings or one-on-one meetings, they didn't look, dress, eat, or act anything like they expected millionaires to be. In fact, one of the more humorous parts of the beginning of the book that they talked about was when they first had this big group meeting. They did this big spread with all sorts of quote-unquote millionaire type of foods, like high-end champagnes, the caviar, and so forth. And the clients came in and they looked at the stuff and wanted nothing to do with it. They were, I guess, looking for the pizzas, the hot dogs, or chicken marsala, or what have you. They were not, that was not who these folks were. What they soon discovered was that, and when what you should equate to the organization is the same as your organization, is the millionaire in your organization, 2/3 are self-employed. Only 1 in 5 is currently retired. Their average age is 57 years. They have 3 children. Almost their spouse is equally or more frugal than the other spouse is. And as a combined unit, they are serious budgeters. They typically, 97% are homeowners. 50% have lived in that same home for 20 years or more, so you can imagine in most cases it has some significant equity. Most live in middle-class neighborhoods. You won't find these folks living in gated communities or building McMansions in middle class. And their home the home values at the time this book was written in the late 90s was around $320,000. And I put that equation now to somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000 today, I guess, all depending on where you're living and so forth. Their spending habits, as you can see from the slide here, they are very frugal people. Again, I say frugal, but they could quite frankly use the word cheap. 50% would never spend more than $350 on a suit or $140 on a watch. And most use Visa or MasterCard instead of American Express. And for the very simple reason, American Express charges fees where typically Visa and MasterCard don't. They don't want to pay the fees. As you can see from their automobiles, 81% will purchase their vehicle outright. Almost 60% will spend under $35,000. Only 23% buy their cars new. Again, they realize that the moment you buy, as we all know, is the moment we buy a car, and if we bought one new one today and we drove it off the lot and brought it around the block and returned it, you would be facing a depreciation of somewhere 10, 15, maybe 20%. Our middle-class millionaires are aware of that. They don't want to take the depreciation. They want to have it happen before they buy their car. Therefore, their cars are typically 4 years old or longer, and they, as a rule, will own something like an F-150 or an Explorer. Why? Because it's practical. They can use it for their business. Many of them are entrepreneurs, and they can use it for family purposes, transporting their kids' hockey equipment and so forth. A large majority of make up less than 20% of the workforce, but account for 66% of all millionaires. Many of these businesses fall under what we call the dull normal category. It could be farmers, welding contractors, plumbers, HVAC, etc., dentists, accountants, even pest controllers. Generally, they will see themselves as cash poor because much of their realized income is either going right back into something highly appreciable, such as their home, their retirement accounts or right back into their business. Again, to emphasize, they are generally self-employed. 75% are entrepreneurs, while others are professionals such as CPAs, lawyers, doctors, etc. Typically, they've begun the business on their own. 91% have never received as much as $1 to start their business. And interestingly, less than 20% plan to turn that business over for one reason or another. The millionaire entrepreneur, most are going to require some type of financial planning to improve philanthropic potential. Only few percent have put plans in place. I think we'd probably all agree few are prospected by nonprofits, and however, they are the core business of many financial advisors. Millionaires' net worth in this country, there is roughly 8.5 million millionaire families in the United States. Only 6% have net assets over $10 million. And let's face it, those seem to be the families that we all seem to gravitate towards, that top 6%. And we can pretty much be assured that those folks are being inundated by requests to support the various causes that they're connected to. The overlooked segment, and the vast majority of our millionaires out there, fall under that category. And as you can see, the average millionaire in this country is about 3.7 million. In the typical or median, the largest block of our middle class millionaire population is at 1.5 million. Real interesting in that study that just came out in the past few weeks by UBS Wealth Management. They did a study and asked a simple question to the families that had assets between $1 to $5 million, and they asked, do you feel wealthy? And 72%, even though in the 7 to 5% segment of the most affluent people in our country. Even more interesting is that people that have assets of over $5 million, 40% said that they didn't feel wealthy. So why is it? What's the concern? What are those things that's keeping them up at night from feeling secure with what they've earned? And as you can see from this slide, running out of money by far, in a lot of cases, it doesn't matter how much wealth you may have, is a huge concern. Rising medical costs, Medicare, assisted living, living longer, these are huge issues with our middle class millionaires. In fact, this other slide kind of by Princeton Associates focuses even a little more on that. And, it's pretty much the same theme that you see running into this. A few other things like kids and grandkids education. These are pressing concerns in this segment. And as you see at the bottom there, gifts to charity at 27%. That doesn't mean that these folks don't care or don't want to give to your organization. They just feel paralyzed to do something meaningful because they have all these other challenges and other issues. So, summary here, there are over 8.4 millionaires in this country. Over 13 million have, and I also want to throw this bullet in, is there's also additional 13 million who have assets between $500,000 and $1 million that could be key plan-giving prospects for your organization. Most have don't think they're wealthy, and few have done little, if any, type of financial planning. So, as an organization, what can you do about this? And at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Ron to talk a little bit about a new approach. Ron?
Thanks, Harold. Great information there. It's a real honor to be with you all today. Obviously, in the context of the time frame today, we have a limited amount of time, obviously, to go through some of this various subject matter that we're covering. Harold I'm going to turn it back over to him in just a few minutes, and at the end of today's presentation, I'll give you some information on how you can go a little bit deeper with some of these ideas we're sharing, if in fact you have interest in doing so. So what I'd like to talk about now, as Harold mentioned, is what we refer to as the excess wealth conversation. And as Harold mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this is something that we really are, it's an overused word, but we really are passionate about it. We really believe in it. Yes, I've been practicing for about 20 years, but it was about 10 years ago that I, as a financial professional, I'm an attorney and financial planner by background, stepped off of several boards that I was involved in for charitable organizations because I was frustrated that my contribution wasn't being as valuable as I thought it could be. And after stepping off and reflecting on how I could give in a more tangible, more substantial, more valuable way, more personal way as well, I decided that the thing I could do maybe better than anyone else within that particular organization's network would have really fruitful, really productive conversations, empowering, inspiring conversations with people who had financial means and often financial means beyond what they realized. Over the years, the last 10 years, we have been very blessed, to say the least, to be catalysts in releasing millions of dollars, both in major and planned gifts, into a whole variety of organizations here in our local community and beyond, in other states across the country as well. And so what we're sharing with you here isn't just an idea, it's a proven technique. And so let me talk about what is this excess wealth conversation. And really it's rooted in the fact that every gift, whether it be major or planned gift, okay, almost always, there's those surprise planned gifts that show up that, come in from someone that may have been completely off your radar. But most of the substantial gifts that you as a charitable organization receive begin with a conversation. As Harold had said, going through the Middle Class Millionaire, sort of attributes, what we want you to realize is that there are more people than you currently can appreciate that love your organization and they love the work that you're doing. And the fact is, these people, they would do more. They would do more exponential giving, both during their lifetime and after death, if only they knew and if only they confidently believed that they could do so. And when I say that, what I mean is they need to know, they need to just confidently believe and understand and apprehend that they can do more giving without negatively affecting their own financial independence, without negatively impacting their family legacy objectives. And if you can strategically and effectively, as an organization, be the source, the relationship, the catalyst in their life to help them to discover this and acknowledge this, that they have excess wealth, as we call it, beyond what they need for themselves and their family, then you will succeed in empowering and inspiring just beyond what you can imagine. And I can tell you this with great confidence. Again, we've done it for nearly 10 years. Now, we've heard a lot about donor-centric, development approaches, and really at the core, that's what we're talking about here. When you're talking about middle-class millionaires, you can't rely upon the same old conversation. And that Harold is, rather creatively and with a fun spirit, showing us with Dylan and with Apple is that, we're constantly, all of us, if we're honest, we're constantly looking for new, more innovative, more creative ways to do what we're trying to do. And at the end of the day, with middle-class millionaires, that's more important than ever. So what are middle-class millionaire donors looking for? Well, as Harold alluded to, they're looking for financial clarity. They're looking for confidence about their future. With all due respect, Harold showed you the list. You aren't at the top of their list. Charitable giving, increasing their philanthropy and their social impact, it's not at the top of their list. And if we're honest, all of us are human beings, just like your donors. It's not at the top of our list either, because it can't be. It's not responsible to have it at the top of our list. So we have to respect that fact, and we have to understand that the vast majority of these folks in the middle class millionaire donor demographic, Harold said only 3% of them have written down their plans. What he's talking about is plans for some type of a charitable gift through their estate plan. The vast majority of them, from the data and from my anecdotal experience, have done some form of planning. When they start into an event that we might be assisting in producing or a conversation that we may be having with the donor, almost all of them have done at some point in their lives estate planning of some sort, financial planning. Obviously, they've got accountants or attorneys or financial professionals in their lives. These are not folks that have fallen off the apple cart yet, but yet they don't have the financial clarity and confidence they need to be releasing the kind of gifts that they could be and the kind of gifts that you would hope that they would be. In addition, they're very private. They need to know that if they're going to talk about this stuff with whoever they're going to talk about it with, that it's absolutely confidential and protected information. And so, very, very important aspect of these conversations is privacy. And what is often missed is that they need to be inspired. They need to be, in addition to being inspired, they need to be empowered. Okay, they don't need to be educated, and they don't need to be given technical jargon and strategy talk and tactical, CRTs and, donor advised funds and, do you have highly appreciated assets and how about a charitable gift annuity? And, yeah, all of that stuff's obviously important at some point in the conversation, but we make the mistake, too many of us, in leading with tactics at a premature time in the conversation. And I had one mentor of mine years ago tell me that when you use the C word, and the C word being charity, prematurely in any of these conversations, it's like dropping a 4-letter F-bomb on the table. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, and it can completely sour what could have been just an incredible opportunity. And so we have to lead with the donor, and these are the things that they want, and these are the things that they need. So if we look at, what is a donor-centric conversation? As I said, it has to start at the foundation with them, their own financial well-being, their own financial freedom and independence. Because until they feel that they have taken care of themselves as a husband and wife or as a family, whatever the needs of that family may be from a financial income and financial independence standpoint, they can't even think about, from my experience, they can't even think about their estate planning very effectively for their children because they don't even know if they're going to have enough. And I'm not talking about folks with, just scraping a few pennies together who are justified to be wondering if they're going to have enough. I'm talking about millionaires. I'm talking about $5 million in net worth, $10 million in net worth, and even up, because it's all relative, folks. It's all relative. Financial independence, I don't care if you get 5 or 10 or 50 million, the lifestyle that is being sustained on an annual basis is often a relative concept, and people don't always feel, particularly in the wake of 2008, that they're secure and that they can afford giving more money to you and to your organization and to your great work. It's only after we can get them confident about financial independence can we move up this pyramid that you see before you to the family legacy conversation. When we get there, it's about why do you want to leave money to your kids? Of course you want to leave money to your family, your kids, your grandkids, and there's things that you want to accomplish. But the question that often gets missed is why do you want to leave money? If we can get folks talking about their family and their concerns and their hopes relative to the kids and grandkids and what they're trying to achieve, why they want to leave an inheritance, we can help them to be more thoughtful about how much that would cost and how much is enough, how much is too much. And in the course of that, we can continue to move up the pyramid after they've taken care of themselves and their families to this social capital portion, excess wealth as we call it. And when we get folks to this point, what we help them to understand and universally they agree with is there's only 2 things you can do with excess wealth. And I've thought a lot about this for about 20 years now, and I think you guys would agree when you hear it. It's pretty self-apparent when you hear it, but there's only 2 things you can do with excess wealth. You can live more, or you can give more. They're both really fun. They're both very enjoyable and meaningful. but they're also very different. And the best plan provides the financial wherewithal to do both. Okay? So this is what a donor-centric conversation, this excess wealth conversations we call it, looks like. It's also, as I've said a few times, it's also designed not with an education focus or information as the thrust, but understanding what motivates them, what concerns them, what drives them, and really connecting to those areas of conversation in a way that will inspire and empower. It's holistic. It's comprehensive. It's personal. You get people to really open up and be authentic and honest about what their hopes and their fears and their dreams are, what their story is, what they really care about, and ultimately, either to share with you the things that they already care a great deal about philanthropically or charitably, in some cases, to help them discover what that is that they care about. Many of them don't often, really have a clear sense of that when they first start talking with us or with any professional about this kind of stuff. So it's a strategic approach to assessing and really, more importantly, helping them assess as donors their financial capacity and then also their philanthropic intent and what they hope to accomplish, what they care about. And it's really ultimately an invitation to plan at another whole level, another whole plane. I like to say, as I said, folks that are in this demographic, they haven't fallen off the apple cart yesterday. However, as a big football fan, I use a lot of football metaphors. They've brought the football all the way down the field, but yet they're often sitting in what we call that red zone, that area from the goal line to the 20-yard line, where they're almost into the end zone. They're almost accomplishing that goal of scoring the touchdown, but they haven't quite brought it across the goal line and done that yet. They've done a lot. And they'll all tell us, by the way, and they'll tell you, I'm all set. I've done all that already. I've got people helping me with that. I'm really well managed on all that. The reality is, if you ask them if they've built in any kind of charity within their estate plan, almost universally, as Harold told you, more than 95% or so have not. And many of these folks are sitting on your boards. They're all throughout your donor constituency. And it's not because they don't care. It's not because they're not even, really jazzed and excited and emotionally attached to what you're doing and the mission of your organization, the work and the service that you're providing. It's just because they don't think they can. Okay, so I told you what it is. That's the excess wealth conversation in a nutshell. Again, big picture. If you want to go deeper dive there, we're actually doing a program on January 23rd that Harold will share with you that's focused exclusively on the excess wealth conversation. But I want to quickly cover in my last few minutes what it is not, because it's very important. You've all heard the story that to recognize what an authentic dollar bill is and what a counterfeit is, you start with what the authentic one looks like, and then you study the counterfeit, right? So I want to kind of do that here. I told you what it is. Let's not fall into the trap of doing some of this that you see on the slide. It is not focused on your organization or your organization's needs. The opposite of donor-centric is organization-centric. And that is, by and large, everything else that you're doing in your development efforts, which is still important, absolutely needs to be part of the whole repertoire. But when you're in this domain and you're trying to facilitate this level of conversation, it's not at all what should be going on. It's not an ask for a gift. See, the difference here is we want to empower donors to discover their full capacity so they can proactively say to you and to maybe some other organizations, I have a whole bunch of financial capacity I just discovered I have. I want to have some fun with it. I want to realize some meaning and purpose by really, getting in the game more with this newfound financial capacity that I just found. You don't start with the ask. You start with empowering them to the discovery and then bringing them to the table. Again, exponentially greater gift is the result most often. It's not guided. Here's a big controversial one. It's not guided by or conducted by a card-carrying staff member. Remember what I said. Privacy is huge here. They're not going to open that kimono fully when they know that you actually are serving first and foremost the organization and not them. So we need to figure out how do we create that kind of safety, that kind of privacy, that they'll feel comfortable doing this. And it's usually going to require someone else added to the already existing professional team. We're going to talk to you In just a minute, I'm going to turn it back over to Harold, and we're going to talk very briefly about the philanthropic advisory council idea. But that's the way that we recommend, in a sustainable way, that you can do this without having to have you or a card-carrying staff member carrying that water. It's also not focused on tactics, as I mentioned. We have to be very careful who we invite into the philanthropic advisory council group that we're going to talk about in just a minute, who might be facilitating these conversations, because it cannot be about that advisor. Just like it can't be about your organization, it can't be about him or her either. We don't want anybody who's interested in selling product or soliciting in any way. It has to be about the donor, genuinely. And then out of that, it will evolve to becoming about you and your organization. It just will, especially when you are the source of this discovery and the catalyst of this very empowering discovery. And exponentially, I've never worked with a donor that was introduced to me through a particular charity, and they discovered this capacity and this excess wealth and didn't include that particular charity, at least as one of the charitable benefactors that they were going to include. It's just my own experience, not to say it might not happen, but that's also really, really important. So I don't have a ton of time here, but I will just quickly run through the man who couldn't pronounce philanthropy. And this is a very successful family. I wrote down a couple of quick notes for you. They were clearly in this middle class millionaire demographic. Estimated net worth somewhere between $4 and $5 million, depending on the value of their various business enterprises. They owned a family heating oil business for many years, on a number of real estate investment properties. So they had a real estate investment business as well, with good, strong income coming in from both of those businesses. And then, as a little bit of an attempt to diversify, they opened a car dealership that was also very successful. They had very strong income, and they had been very effective over the years at saving as well. They were connected to several local charities, all of whom were serving children and families that were at risk, lower income children and families. But yet, even though they had this financial success, they weren't college educated, they were blue-collar wealthy in the truest sense. They were involved with some local charities. Gentleman and his wife, I met them through an event that we were co-producing on behalf of a local YMCA with a member that they brought in, the YMCA, into the Philanthropic Advisory Council group, and we team taught an event that we call Enhancing the Wealth of Your Life. And so at the end of this, the goal is to continue the dialogue and to get folks who attended to ask to continue the conversation personally, and that's what these folks were coming up to let us know they wanted to do. And the first thing out of his mouth was, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yes." Is, "What in the heck is philanthropy?" He couldn't even pronounce the word. And it was almost endearing because he's this really successful guy, great heart, and he genuinely didn't know what philanthropy was, or for that matter, how to pronounce it. The best part of this, and again, time is limiting here, is we were able to take him through an initial set of conversations, ultimately proceeded to them engaging with some existing professionals, and then I came alongside with the other member of the Philanthropic Advisory Council, and we assisted the whole team and the whole process to take their estate plan to another level. And through that, they ultimately realized how sound and secure they were for themselves, and they were able to articulate what they wanted to accomplish for their kids, which was $1 million gift per child. And out of the process, they could see that on a projected basis, they had north of $3 million of money left over after they paid for their own retirement all the way out to life expectancy and beyond. After they left $1 million indexed for inflation to the 3 kids each, they had north of $3 million on a projected basis left over. And it was beyond what you could imagine in terms of the level of excitement when they could leave more than $3 million to a planned gift, a little bit north of $1 million each to 3 different organizations, including the YMCA group that introduced them. And there was a whole array of things that we did for that, including some new trusts and some updates to their existing trusts, some guaranteed retirement income investment vehicles that we, with their existing financial professionals, were able to support and help recommend. Some life insurance for wealth replacement to the family. They had a large retirement plan for the husband that we partially converted to a Roth IRA. And we did some current giving of some of their other investment assets to a donor advised fund to create an offsetting deduction so that they could do that Roth conversion without any federal income tax. And then we did a donor advised fund, which is where they did their current giving into. And that allowed the family to also do some increases, pretty nice increases, I would add, by way of annual gifts to these various three organizations that they cared most about. So it was really and ultimately, just a classic win-win-win in many ways. And here it is, and there's a whole bunch of these folks right within your own donor constituency who don't think they have the financial capacity, just like these folks didn't. So at this point, I want to turn it back over to Harold to start a little bit the wind-down process here. He's going to take us through a little bit of an introduction into this Philanthropic Advisory Council that I've been alluding to. Back to you, Harold.
Great. Thanks, Ron. Yeah, let's the few minutes that we got left here, let's talk a little bit about what your organization can do to connect with this segment of your population that's probably being overlooked. As Ron alluded to, first, I think we all need to think about what is the donor's concerns and truly be donor-centric. You can do this, and a tremendous resource would be what we call a Philanthropic Advisory Council to help your donors begin the philanthropic conversation. You can use your PAC to provide valuable educational resources that addresses these concerns. And this is truly going to demonstrate leadership and show them that you care about their concerns, about their issues. So where do you begin? Well, you can begin. How do we create your planned giving dream team? Well, let's think about your volunteers that are involved in your organization. Our finding has been, if you look at the segment of your board, your executive board, auxiliary board, if you look at your donor base, if you look at your membership constituents, even if you look at people that are sort of on the side connected with your organization in the community, you'll probably discover that you got somewhere between 25 to 40% of these supporters that are involved in the financial industry. They're your local attorneys, accountants, financial planners, insurance professionals, bankers, investment bankers, so forth. You want to pull these folks and recruit and train them. A typical PAC that we see can work pretty effectively anywhere between 5 to 6 people. When you get up to about a dozen, that's maybe when it gets a little bit cumbersome. But somewhere in between that 5 to 10, 5, 12, that's a great, powerful combination of people of various industries in the financial world that can help you. You want to have them provide educational events or materials that educates and inspires those middle-class millionaire donors. You want to use them to help create a true gift planning culture within your organization. What can you do? Well, you want to leverage their expertise to address donors' concerns. You could offer perhaps estate planning workshops. Small business exit strategy. 70% of small business owners out there don't have an exit strategy for retirement and getting out of that business and being able to live the rest of their life with what they've earned from that business or what they can get when they sell that business. And there are attorneys out there that focus on nothing but that you probably, maybe one way or another, have connected to your organization that could be a valuable workshop to offer to your donor base. Elderly law. Personally, I had both my parents go into assisted living within the past year. I sure wish, as we were going on this journey of getting them there, that I had learned more about elderly law and VA benefits and all those sort of things that could have helped my parents transition and provide some income for them that could have helped them with their move. Long health care, you see the others here that you could build a workshop to provide information that could help address those concerns. As a result, you're going to generate appreciation and trust. They're going to feel valued and understood by the organization. It's going to allow for some significant follow-up conversations at one level or another, and it's going to create a plant of seed and an interest in gift planning strategy. So, as Ron said, it really is a win-win-win scenario for everyone involved. And if I haven't convinced you to get your financial professionals involved, the next couple of slides here involve some studies that I came across. And some growing trends. In this particular slide by Bank of America, it talks about how nonprofit staff involvement in helping donors make charitable decisions. Back in 2006, the nonprofit staff was involved in about 41% of the time. Today, that number has dropped down to under 30%. More and more donors are consulting with their legal professionals first, particularly the baby boomers. Another growing trend, another study, percentage of donors who learned about giving or philanthropic options from their financial advisors first. Back in 1994, it was a meager 4%. Today, it's near 30. In another study, who did a donor or client go to first to seek out charitable advice? Well, in almost 70% of the time, it was their local accountant or their attorney or financial planner were heavily involved. Again, more and more folks are seeking their financial professional. However, before you reach out to folks, you need to understand that there's a few studies that point out some trends that aren't necessarily great, and just means that if you create a philanthropic advisory council, you need to train those folks involved with it, because this slide, again by Bank of America Merrill Lynch, points out who initiated the charitable gift conversation. And sadly, it only was brought up by the financial professional roughly 6% of the time, and the vast majority, 94%, it was brought up by the donor or the client. And how did the donor or client feel? Well, they weren't necessarily happy. In fact, only 21% said they were satisfied with their advisors. Why? Well, donors were frustrated that it was they that had to bring up the idea of a philanthropic conversation. In fact, on one study here that pointed out that if the financial professional talked about it first, 34% of the time the donors would seriously consider the idea. If the financial professional brought up their philanthropic intent first, that number jumped to 43%. Donors get turned off by the tax lead. They don't want to hear that it's all about saving taxes. In fact, when this question was posed, what was most important to their to the donors and to their clients, 46% of the time, saving on taxes is what the advisor said. When that same question was posed to the donor, they said only 10% of the time it was important. As you can see, there's a disconnect here. And as Ron alluded to, they focus way too much on the technical and not enough on the personal or social value. This slide kind of alludes to that. 80% of the time it's spent on the tactical. Only 20% of the time it's on the dreams and visions. As a result, most are not taking action. So as we really wind down here in the last couple of slides, I want to give you one last thing to think about. And that is, this great transfer of wealth is still happening. I'm sure many of you have heard about the Boston College Center on Wealth and Philanthropy. In fact, the study was just revised this spring, and it is now projected that over the next 50 years, over $59 is going to transfer from one generation to the next. And when that transfer of wealth takes place, it is expected that $6.3 trillion is going to go to charity through bequest or planned giving. So you need to be in the game if you're not. And last slide here and their factoid is who currently has the wealth in this country. Between the silent and greatest generation of the baby boomers, is roughly 90%. So again, the wealth of the transfer of wealth is still happening. And are you ready? Steve, I guess to turn it back to you and see if there's any questions out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys. That was really wonderful. Harold, all that data you shared, I had never seen any of that before. That was very interesting. I was just kind of sitting here pretty tuned into everything you were saying, so thanks for that. And Ron, thanks again for sharing your thoughts as well. We do have probably about, I'd say, 6 minutes for questions or so. So I would encourage anyone listening in to send in any questions our way. Looks like a few are coming in now. Harold, I think this question from Jackie was perhaps during while you were talking initially. Could you repeat the 3 core beliefs? Looks like they missed number 2. I think she's referring to the 3 core beliefs that you spoke about very early on.
Yeah, sure, Steve. Our 3 core beliefs as a firm is that we believe that every organization has a segment of their donor population, those B or C level donors that we call the middle class millionaires that are in your organization in one capacity or another. We believe that with the correct information, they can discover that they can do more. And then, finally, we believe, as we've demonstrated, hopefully to you, that you have a team of financial professionals out there most likely connected to your organization that could help.
Great. Here's one from Rohi. Rohi is wondering, how can small local organizations demonstrate their impacts to the millionaires within their city? So maybe they're struggling because they're small to get some of the word out. What advice would you have to those small organizations who want to do all the things you talked about?
Ron, do you want any thoughts on that one, or do you want me to take that?
I'm sorry, I had you on mute inadvertently. Steve, could you repeat that question?
Yeah, Rohit here was wondering, how can small local organizations demonstrate their impact to the millionaires within their city?
Yeah, I guess, that's the $1 million question, right? And I think, it's a critical part of the equation. I think at the end of the day, it's finding the real life stories, the human, the human beings, the flesh and blood stories that have been impacted. And to the extent that you can capture a testimony from someone who has been impacted by your organization, sharing a personal testimony about how it changed their life, how it impacted. I think it's also critical. A lot of people overlook this. A lot of us charity leaders often overlook this, but groups like Charity Navigator and others have emphasized, and I think it's something clearly that donors in my experience are looking at, the importance of demonstrating how much of an annual budget, dollar is allocated to, services, to end user services, as opposed to administration and development costs. So those are a couple of things that I think you can do to create that kind of donor confidence. But communications from your board, sharing strategic plans, I think is a huge myth that organizations often miss, because it's not just about the good work you're doing currently, which is obviously critical, but it's also about where's the future of the organization going, and is it something that, in addition to the work you're doing now, is that something that also inspires? So those are just a few thoughts in response to that question, Steve.
Yeah, and just to add on that, and just to add to that is, is be transparent and tell your story really on your, particularly online, electronically, as much as you can. We're really finding, I know in talking to some of the clients that Ron has worked with, a lot of these these middle class millionaires, these people that have set up these plans to give, in a lot of cases, they haven't necessarily identified the charity that they plan to give to. They may have created a donor advised fund that's sitting with a large sum of money, but they have not yet gone through the process necessarily of determining exactly who they're planning to give it to. So so they're researching, and they're savvy enough now to go online and be connected to the story about organizations that they know something about. And the better you can tell your story through social media, as well as when you have meeting, when you have talking to people in person, it's going to help connect.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's one from Katie, and a couple of people seconded and thirded the question, so I guess I better ask it. Katie's wondering, do you have any recommendations for how to put the informational sessions out there? So they're an environmental nonprofit, and they feel a little bit of a disconnect in putting out a financial planning presentation. What advice would you have for Katie, who maybe wants to get that financial planning kind of off the ground and running?
So there's two primary ways that you can do it, and the other thing, with Katie, I can understand the disconnect that you're perceiving there. And the reality is, your donors, just like you and I, are real people, and so to the extent that they fall into this middle class millionaire demographic, these are real issues that they're wrestling with. And quite frankly, I say this coming from the advisory community. the majority of my brethren, my peers in the marketplace, are not helping them figure this out. This isn't just traditional financial planning. This is, what we refer to in our practice as life and legacy planning. It's about so much more than just money. It's about so much more than retirement or taxes or, I think too many advisors make it about all these things that, they're important, but yet at the same time, they're not the big motivation, the big aspirational type things that we're talking about in this context. And so I think, that perceived disconnect is reasonable, but I think you need to get past that a little bit by remembering these are just real people. And if you're bringing a public service in the form of a gift back through an event, let's say, that you're sponsoring at a really nice restaurant, you're bringing in a guest speaker to teach on something that's compelling in and of itself, doesn't matter what organization you are. People are going to come. And so what we can do is, offline, is we can equip you with the whole model. What does the invitation system look like? What does the room need to be set up like? How does this presentation go? I think it's best, and again, most sustainable if you can find, a handful of people within your organization that would have the competence and the confidence to be able to deliver a talk. I will often come in and team teach the first few to try to get organizations off the ground if that's an interest. But in addition to events, the simplest way, just to walk before you run, is, we can help script some phone scripts for you as to how to talk to these folks and request just one-to-one conversations over lunch or coffee or breakfast, and begin these conversations in more of a personal one-to-one fashion. And so those are the two primary ways that you do it. And we could talk again more offline. It's a little bit of a bigger question than we can answer here today.
Yeah, we'll definitely share your contact info. And real quick before we go, I want to address Lori's question. Lori here asked a couple of times. Harold, I know much of the stats and data you shared was pertained to the American middle class, but Lori was wondering how much of that maybe translates into the Canadian landscape. Do you have any sense of what that looks like to our friends in the North? Similar, maybe a little bit different? What do you think?
I actually, Harold, if you don't mind, I'll jump in on that one because I have a whole bunch of really close friends in Toronto, and I don't know how that, represents, by way of Canada at large, but these are folks just like myself that are advisors working with charitable organizations in Toronto, and they have had almost verbatim the exact same experiences I have. So the price, I saw someone mention housing, maybe we're kind of like under the level of, what an average home costs up there. That would certainly be reasonable. I can relate with that, by the way, because Boston is definitely not in that stratosphere either. We're much higher. But the reality is that a lot of those same, hopes and fears and concerns and things that drive people, those same attributes of the middle class millionaire do exist there as they do here.
Cool. Good. I'm glad we were able to get that. I don't want to ignore our friends to the north at all there. Well, guys, it's about 2 minutes till. I know there's a couple more questions in the chat room, but I don't want to keep people too long, especially if they haven't gotten to their lunch. Fair to say that you'll be willing to take some questions offline as well?
Absolutely.
Sure.
I thought you would say yes. Well, I'll give you guys the final word to talk about a little bit more of how we can get in touch with you and some of the offers that you've got going on over there at Activate Legacy.
Great. Thanks, Steve. And just very briefly here, we have created what we call the Grow Legacy Gift System. It's a 7-step system in tools that support that system to help create a plan giving culture, our gift planning culture in your organization. I won't go through the 7 steps here, but I encourage you to check out our website and take a look there. How we, as resources that we could offer as a firm, is we offer a number, several times during the course of the year, some free webinars on various topics. In fact, I'm going to allude to one here on the very last slide about an upcoming one that we have. And we also do some webinar series workshops that we provide during the course of the year as well. We have a half day and a full day training workshop if you wanted to have us come in and help get your board on board with plan giving and get them going. If plan giving has not really been a major focus for your organization, and if you got to that point of creating your philanthropic advisory council and you wanted some help putting it with training your teams we provide that service as well. We have some donor presentations that have been very successful in getting those middle-class millionaires inspired to have a follow-up conversation. And we have some materials and tools and coaching services that we offer. And finally, for those of you that might be interested, if you want to have a much deeper dive in the excess wealth conversation, the art of unlocking the exponential gift from the middle-class millionaire, we're offering a free workshop, our free webinar on January 28th at 2 o'clock, and you can go to our website and register if you're interested. That's all I've got on my end. Ron, anything real quick in yours?
No, that was it. Our time is perfectly right on cue there, huh, Steve?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. You guys are great. Thanks so much for sharing all that info. It's nice to hear some New England accents, just as a personal side as well. So thanks for being here.
We're gonna
and
go,
thank you all for taking.
We're gonna go park the car.
Go park the car, yeah. This is a lot of fun, and thanks to everyone who hung out with us for an hour. I know this is a busy time of year. Thanks for taking an hour out of your day. We've got some great webinars coming up in 2015, so check out our resources page. I'm going to take the next 2 weeks off if no one minds, but we're going to be back in 2015 with some awesome webinars. We've got some other resources on our website that you can check out. But we'll end it there. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll be sending out the recording and the slides here in just a couple of hours, so look for an email from me. And we hope to see you next year. Have a great weekend, happy holidays, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye now.